you leave the NICU, you also leave the very supported environment. For weeks or months, medical team was there around the clock. Monitors showed you how your baby was doing. And then suddenly, when you walk out of the hospital door, none of it comes with you. I shared about the anxiety that I had after we came home in the last episode. That transition is its own kind of shock. And good post-discharge care systems are designed to soften that. Hi, this is Never Too Early. Today, I want to talk about post-NICU care system, specifically what we experienced in Germany and why having the bridge between the NICU and the outside world made such a difference in those first months at home. We came home with an oxygen tank. It had been delivered to our apartment on the day of discharge, arranged by the hospital. It sat in the middle of the living room, connected to the baby with a long cable, which meant we were able to move around as long as we stayed within the length of the cable. For going outside, we had a portable oxygen tank. Taking walks with a portable oxygen tank was quite an experience. The baby wearing a cable connected to the oxygen tank definitely drew attention. Strangers would give blessings, and women of various ages would come over to share their own story of preemie child or grandchild. It genuinely warmed my heart every time. The simple portable monitor that came with the oxygen tank was a helpful transition when there is no longer the big screen over baby's bed. My husband and I were so used to understanding our son through numbers on the screen during the NICU stay, so we hadn't had much chance to develop parental instinct. The portable monitor was almost like a soother for us parents. It helped us until we learned how to understand the baby naturally. One of the most important parts of the German post-discharge system is a dedicated post-discharge nurse assigned to support families transitioning home from the NICU. A nurse who comes to you at home after discharge. We were introduced to the program and was given an option to sign up for it by the family consultant at the NICU before the discharge. The program offered 10 visits throughout the first 3 months at home, but we ended up only needing 3 visits because luckily there weren't major issues. But what she provided in those visits was invaluable. Practical guidance on caring for a newborn at home, feeding questions, what to watch for, how to introduce solid foods later, and so on. Factoring in the prematurity. All of it was delivered in our own living room rather than a hospital corridor. What made the situation even more special was that the nurse assigned to us turned out to be one of the nurses who had been present at the dramatic birth scene in the original birth hospital where my son was born in 23 weeks. It felt like a full circle. About 2 weeks after discharge, my son went back to the NICU overnight for his early vaccinations. The fact that the hospital handled all the vaccinations required in the early months, during and after the NICU stay, meant we didn't have to coordinate or stress about that on top of everything else that we had to consider and handle. At that stage, one less thing helps so much. One requirement before the hospital let us go home was having a pediatrician already identified. The moment you walk out, you do need a point of contact. My son's pediatrician is always in sync with the hospital where we stayed and still go to for follow-up checkups. So it's been so nice that we never had to explain things twice in every step of the way. The other pillar of our post-discharge care was the SPZ, which translates roughly as a social pediatric center. The SPZ is a specialist outpatient center for children with developmental challenges, disabilities, or chronic conditions staffed by an interdisciplinary team. Pediatricians, psychologists, physiotherapists, social pedagogues, and other important roles working together. We were introduced to it alongside the Post-Discharge Nurse program before discharge. For preemies, the SPZ provides scheduled developmental follow-up checkups across the early years, tracking eyes, art, motor development, speech, and overall milestones. First, it was more frequent, like every 2 to 3 months, then it slowed down over time and is now at every 6 months or longer. It's been helping us understand where my son is on his developmental trajectory and find where to pay attention to, and they sync with each child's pediatrician, so the treatments are agreed and informed between two parties. What I am most grateful for looking back is that the German system thought through the patient experience end to end. Not just the NICU itself, but also what comes after. The post-discharge nurse coming to us at home, the SPZ follow-up, all of it is covered by insurance, so I never had to think about cost in the middle of everything else. I genuinely cannot imagine having to figure out all of it out alone. Arriving home with a fragile preemie on oxygen without a system to catch us. Post-discharge care concept exists in various forms in many countries with established healthcare system. It is worth asking your NICU discharge team or pediatrician what specialist programs exist in your area. They often exist but aren't always proactively offered. All new parents need support. Post-NICU parents need it especially, and in a different way. The baby is still in its prematurity, things aren't fully stable yet, and you're hyper cautious and still running on NICU instinct. And the people who love you often can't fully provide what you need because most of them haven't been through it. Having an established system that meets you where you are was essential during this phase. I want to mention this again because it's so important. If you are approaching discharge and don't know what kind of post-discharge support exists in your country or city, ask. Ask the discharge team or pediatrician. Ask other NICU parents in your area. It just isn't always handled to you automatically, depending on the system in your area. You got through the NICU, you just need a landing pad for settling into the outside world. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. This is Never Too Early.